Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Spilling the EsTea podcast. It's me, Dulcinea, here to guide you through your esthetician journey and talk real about skincare, talk real about how it is running a salon, talk real about being a solo esthetician. It's all the things that we do in this industry. And today we are back to the series that I have been doing. The last one was about the journey, how I became an esthetician, how hard it is to just get your foot in the door. It was a story of perseverance. And today's episode is pretty much the same, perseverance. That's kind of how I see my journey as an esthetician, is just pushing through. I know there was an episode about our big saying is be like water. My whole life has been like water, and it's kind of goes same with this story today of just being like water and just getting through situations. So this one is just going to be about how I started Humblebee, how I went from just being a solo esthetician to having now 17 studios with right now, I think we have like 45 employees, soon to be more because we really do plan on expanding in the next year, and talk about my journey, how I got there, and what you shouldn't do. And I think it will kind of open your eyes to a lot of things that come up as you become a business owner, or if you just decide just to stay being just a solo esthetician, which both are amazing, and it's also great to just be an employee, to be honest. Like sometimes I look at our employees and I'm like, man, I want to be like you. I want to clock in. I just want to clock in, clock out, and call it a day. So, there's three routes you can go through. And it just depends on what is best for you, at the time in your life, because you can have several options. So today, it's just how Humblebee started. The way Humblebee started, I'm going to start, where it ended on the last podcast. And I got married. That's how I left San Francisco. I would have stayed at that studio for a very long time because I really, really did love the job there. Loved working for that team, and I really felt like family there. So I probably would have stayed if my life didn't move us to Las Vegas. And my husband had what I always called the big boy job. He had the job where he was assistant GM. He had that consistent paycheck. He had the insurance, which I never had insurance for years. I just hope I didn't injure myself. And I moved to Vegas with no clientele, not knowing anyone. The only person I knew was my mom because she lived in Vegas. And that's it. And I had to start from the bottom. And to be honest, this time I wasn't scared because, like I said, I interviewed well. And this time I had experience. And it did take me a while. I'm not going to lie, I'm not a good test taker. It took me a while to pass that state of Nevada test. It was just friggin' 10 questions, and it took me a while to pass those. I passed like the written part perfectly. Just those 10 questions just got me every time. But I ended up passing because I persevere. I am not going to let a test stop me from doing what I love. And I passed. It took me about a good 3 or 4 months, but it kind of worked out because at that time, I was planning the wedding, and my partner, he was like, "Oh, it's okay. You'll pass and we'll work it out from there." So I did pass, and I was so happy that I was like, "Yes." And I went into my first interview. It was literally the first one I applied to and got the job on spot. Why? Because I had experience and I interviewed well. So I started working there, and I only lasted a month because I hated it. I did not like I didn't like the process of how they removed hair. It was a waxing place, so it wasn't sugar. So I just knew better. I knew better, but there's no sugaring jobs out there. There's no one sugaring. So I just thought, okay, this is what you do. You just worked for someone. And at the time, I had a couple friends who did actually start doing their solo thing. The job that I was at, it did end up closing. So some of the estheticians kind of did go on their own into a solo salon. And they just said how much they loved it. They loved the private room and they loved kind of being by themselves. And doing their own thing. So it kind of got my wheel spinning, especially when I first saw my paycheck for that job that I was at. And I mean, it was less than a quarter of what I was making in San Francisco and still working the same hours and just as hard. I just couldn't believe it. And I actually went home crying, like showing my husband my paycheck. It was almost embarrassing to show him how little I was making. And I just kind of threw it out there and I said, I have friends who are doing it on their own and I really think I can do it. And I am so lucky to have a husband who believes in all my wildest dreams because he instantly was like, okay, well, let's look into it. And we were very lucky. I mean, I really just think it was just meant to be because we lived in an area that had a Sola salon, which was pretty much the place my friends were working at. So I said, okay, there's a Sola salon, there's spaces. And I was explaining it to him, and he was like, okay, let's just go and see. So we made an appointment to check it out with the manager, and we did our walkthrough and there was a room available. And it was quite funny because the manager of that Sola, he really, it was kind of funny. He kind of pretty much told us, it's hard. If you don't have clientele, it's very unlikely you'll make it. It was kind of him telling us that you shouldn't do it, especially me not knowing anybody. But he didn't know me because I knew if I was to have someone walk in my doors, I knew that they would be returning clients because I would give them a service that would make them want to come back. So I was kind of thrown back by what he was saying, but more, if you're anything like me, um, have that fire in you to prove someone wrong. That's kind of my mentality when someone tells me no. I'm like, oh, yeah, just watch me. So we got home and me and my husband talked about it and he said, okay, let's do it. So I, got all the stuff, supplies. It makes me laugh because at the time I actually look back at the time I was at the salon I was at, and it pretty much prepped me for having my solo room because I knew exactly the supplies I needed. I knew everything down to a T of what was make me successful in the room supply wise and work ethic wise because I learned it all from there. So I opened our doors. We got our name. We did all the business license, and me and my husband were kind of think of a name that would be good. And I knew I wanted to have B. That's all I knew, B. So I was like, be happy, be this, and we were going through this book that actually had bees. I think my father-in-law gave us like this book of bees, and there was the humblebee, and that me and my husband, he said it, and we looked at each other and said, "Yes, that's it." Because in Vegas, a lot of places have names that are a little bit more Vegas-like. And I came from San Francisco. I felt more like of a granola girl, like more natural, more definitely a different vibe than what Las Vegas was giving at the time. So Humblebee just kind of sound like more like me. And I think it really kind of was a perfect name for what we are now. I always say having a name like Humblebee brings humble employees, humble clients. And I feel like if you are deciding to open your business, kind of think of that. Like what kind of vibe do you want to bring into your doors? So for me, I want just humble, kind people. So that name is a perfect name for what we do. So that was how we got our name. and I was ready to take on this business. And at the time, I was really one of the only sugarists in the area. There was one more, but they were on a different side of town. But they did ended up moving in the same SOLA that I was at. I was really pretty much the only one sugaring in the area where I was at. And there wasn't many, now there's so many more sugarists, which makes me so happy because my goal is to convert waxers into sugarists and waxing clients into sugaring clients because it really is a game changer. And I feel like it's going to be just exploding more and more and more and being more popular because just the difference. I can go off on this, but this will be a different podcast talking about sugaring because it is my passion. But so that's pretty much how Humblebee started, and it was just me, and it was me by myself for about 2 years, and then on the third year is when we hired our first employee. The reason why it was just me and what brought us to bringing on employees was I had kids. And everything changes when you have kids, especially like my availability. I was only able to work 7 to 2. And the reason being is I would get home and then 2, my husband left straight to go to his job. And his job took priority because like I said, he had the job that took care of us. Mine was just building. And the first couple years, the first like 6 months, I sat with no one. I was happy if I got one client, but I just kept going. I was like, nope. I went out, I passed my cards. I would do promotions all the time. I would, like I said, go door to door, talk to people, tell them I'm an esthetician. Oh, you need to try this. And I really, I did Groupons. And I always say Groupons is what made Humblebee what it is today. It got me people in the door. It got one person in, and once I showed them sugaring, they were forever changed and they were repeat clients. And even till this day, I will see a client, and it was one of my day one clients who got in on a Groupon, and 12 years later, they're still seeing us. It will be different estheticians, but they're still with Humblebee. So I'm so glad, they found a home within Humblebee. So it was a lot of work. It was a lot of struggle, but I did ended up getting a full-time clientele. But like I said, it was hard, because once I did get full, I had to go down to changing my hours. Because before I could just work anytime I wanted. Like sometimes I would like, oh, let me do like a 8-hour day, and I would just pack clients in, especially like during those times where like I knew I was going to go on vacation. And if I had to go on vacation, I knew I was going to miss that time, and missing that time means missing money. So I kind of did the math. Okay, if I'm going to miss those days, I need to squeeze as many people into 3 to 4 days. So I didn't have to worry about my rent. I didn't have to worry about my supplies because I knew that would cover it. So all these things you have to think about, especially when you are solo, like think about, okay, I still have to pay rent. I still have to pay for supplies. It's just not like working for a place where you do have the flexibility of coming, just doing, not even the flexibility, just knowing your days you're going to work and that's it. And then you just leave and you don't have to deal with all the other things. So I did that for a while. And when we did decide to hire our first employee, I know, to be honest, my husband kept telling me even earlier on, you need to hire, you need to hire. And I was very feet in the ground, no about this. Mostly because I'm a people pleaser and I just didn't want to be a bad boss. I just kept saying that I don't want to be a bad boss. I don't, especially, I did work for places where people felt certain ways about the owners and about their boss. And, they did treat people how they treated you more like a number rather than family. So if I was going to hire, I just wanted to make sure I do it right because I know how hard every esthetician works in the treatment room, especially being one. So I just felt like if I was going to hire, they should get more. They should be able to have insurance. They should be able to have vacation time off. They should have all these things. So in my mind, like, okay, how am I going to do that if I hire now? So a lot of it was just more of like, okay, I'll hire. And this is kind of what I told my husband. I said, okay, we'll hire, but we have to have a goal of making sure our estheticians are paid properly, they're taken care of, and that they are a priority. We run Humblebee with us being here and our workers here because they're the ones doing the work. So that's always been my mission. Okay, so we started hiring. So this is my first time being a boss. So I knew what I was looking for. I knew I was going to train. So we hired our first one. And then from there, basically how it worked out is, you're slow in the beginning. And I knew she was going to be slow in the beginning, but I felt like I can train anyone how to do anything. I just can't train someone how to have a great personality. So I just knew, okay, we're just gonna find someone who has a great personality. So our first girl we hired, great personality, very good. She learned the process and then she started taking clients. And basically what I would do is I was fully booked. I was very busy. So my paycheck would kind of cover her hours and go from there because I really wanted to do W-2. And that's how we do it now. We do W-2s, they're employees. So I would use what I made to cover her until she was able to get clientele. And so once she got her clientele, then we're like, okay, she has her clientele. And then we saw it was working. So from there, we're like, well, there is another Sola that wasn't too far. It was like 20 minutes away in an area that we thought would be good. So we decided to hire one more person. And that person kind of filled in the gaps because the goal was always to be open 7 days a week, 7 to 2, and then 2 to 9, and have two full-time employees, which would work 5 days, and then a part-time that would work 4. So that way we can cover from 7 to 9. So that's kind of was the mission to have us be fully available. And I was very lucky too because a lot of it was help from my husband because he works in hospitality, so he kind of knew like how to do. I always say the not so fun stuff, the payroll part. So he was always involved. He wasn't involved like fully like I was in the beginning times, but he was always there to kind of guide me and kind of give me advice on just being a boss and just kind of guiding the ship. So we opened our second location and that girl got pretty busy. So we're like, oh, this is great. It's coming together. So then from there is when we hired our fourth employee. And this was all in a span of maybe like a year and a half. And so we had 4 and it was working and um it like nothing's easy. So we did have someone leave Humblebee, so it brought us down to 3. And it was fine, because the person who left, she worked and she put our name out there. And, anyone who's been with us and who has been employed with us, they put a time into Humblebee and, they progressed like the name and brought it to what it is now, you know. So I'm very thankful for people who worked for us, even if it didn't work out, because it's still, you still took care of the clients, you still got those reviews and cared for the brand while, they're here with us. So that's kind of how we navigated hiring and opening locations. It was more of like, okay, this location got busy. Let's maybe venture out a little bit farther. So that came into our third location, which was, we always kind of do 20 minutes away from each other. So that's kind of the gist of how open locations happened. We ended up filling up the whole circle in Las Vegas so that there is a Humblebee. And we stuck with Solas. I get this question a lot. Why didn't you open a storefront? And, storefronts come with a lot of different work. With Solas, it's just plug and play. You just rent the room, you decorate, and you don't have to worry about things like the water, the water bill, the electricity. Think about that if you decide to open up a actual salon in a like your brick and mortar. Think about that because you have to pay for that. You have to get permits. It's just a whole different ball game. And for us, I feel like our estheticians really love the fact that they have a sense of being on their own, but they have the support of Humblebee, our brand, and our team. So I think they like the coziness because it does feel like you are on their own because, they are by themselves in the room doing the work. So the thought of having a actual space is just not even on our radar. We really like it because we can't be everywhere. We can open studios in different places. And that kind of what brought us to, we're in Nevada. We thought, okay, let's go to Reno because Reno was still Nevada. We knew Nevada law. So it made us very easy to jump into a solo salon there. And we kind of did the same thing. You start with one, you get one girl busy. And, for us, we're really lucky because we do use Groupon and we have a lot of reviews on Groupon. So it really does help make that location busy because people see that we're established. They see that we have multiple locations in Nevada. So it makes us a safe bet because I still work the treatment room and I still hear horror stories like, oh, I bought this Groupon, but that person was never there. So having that trust really will make you go far. So, make sure you get those reviews and those, if you do Groupon, make sure you get reviews for there because it really does help you set a whole picture of your business. So that's how we got into Reno because it did just seem like, oh, it was the best option. And me and my family, we live in Northern California. So we do everything remotely. We have our channels that bring us all together to where it doesn't even feel like we are far. We're literally a message away to respond to any of our employees and any of our staff. We have a phone team that has made our life so easy. If you're kind of thinking, how should I navigate getting client schedules? I highly recommend getting a phone team because the phone team will give instant responses, especially if you're in the room on your own. Because that was the thing that to be honest, I hated when I was just a solo esthetician. I never felt off. I always was on my phone scheduling. Even during my kids' performances, I would get messages from clients and having a phone team where I know I'm going to come in, my schedule is going to be packed and happy knowing that our estheticians are taken care of. They have a manager on duty at all times. That was something that I felt was a game changer as we kept evolving Humblebee because we didn't have a phone team for a long time. We would just have the estheticians kind of message and kept looking. If they're slow, they would kind of check the phones. So there wasn't very much of a procedure. And the way we ended up getting here was pretty much COVID. COVID happened. And at the time, we only had Vegas open and I don't even think the Reno was there yet, but we had our Vegas location shut down. And luckily, we were in Las Vegas because Vegas opened way sooner than California did. And we didn't have locations in California at the time. So our first day when we opened our books, we had a massive day of booking. Like the first hour, I think we had like 200 bookings and it would just keep going. Like it kept going up until midnight, just booking after booking. And I remember, everyone was ready to come back. And that day, I was in California, so I flew to Vegas to take some clients too, because I was still living in the Bay Area, but then flying to take clients in Las Vegas. So I was there with everyone and it was intense days of just sugaring people who trusted us and knew, oh, I was not going to touch any of my hair. I was waiting for you guys. So it was just full days of Brazilian and hair removal. And that's pretty much how, my husband got involved because he was in the restaurant industry and he lost his job the day the shutdown happened. So I feel like he kind of saw that and was like, you know what? I think let's do this. He saw potential in it. Cause I always knew like he was gonna work for Humblebee at one point. I knew he was gonna come. I just knew he just needed time to do his thing and because I always feel like we're not in the beauty business, we're in the hospitality business, we're in the customer service business. And him coming customer service, hospitality, and knowing and being very, I always say, well, he's the one who very organized and spreadsheets and, does those little day to day things that aren't seen. And I knew that he would be a perfect fit for what we needed to scale. And so when he jumped on, we really went full force and started growing. And because of that, that's when we decided, okay, let's do Reno. And we did Reno. We were living in Northern California, like I said. So we would drive from Northern to Reno. We'd always pass Sacramento. And I love Sacramento. We would always go through it. And I'm like, oh, this would be perfect for Humblebee. And it was perfect because it was like it wasn't that far from Reno. So when we opened our Humblebee in Sacramento, we actually had people who lived in Sacramento who would go to Reno to get their Brazilians. So we knew we had client base already wanting to see us. So it just made sense. So that was our first California adventure, and it ended up working really, really well. To now we have 3 locations there, and we still plan on growing that area because, they're busy girls. It's a good little area, choose your area, but make sure, that it has a lot of people who are interested in your services. And that area really, really worked well for what we do. So if you're thinking about opening up your space, think about location, think about name and how to get people in the doors. Like all of this comes when when you start building. So from there, we're Northern California. And at that point, we're like, okay, we need one close to where we live. So that's how the northern locations worked. But that's how we ended up getting to where we're at now. That's how we have this many locations and just having those procedures now and having a phone team. I really believe that it takes a village and it takes a team. I couldn't do what we do now if it was just me. There's no way. Even just being as a solo esthetician, I knew I couldn't do that forever because for one, age, I don't know how long my arm will be able to flick, and I knew at one point it would ended up closing if it was just me on my own. But I did know that, me and my husband, we always think long term. So we think, okay, we're sacrificing now for a bigger picture. It makes me laugh because a lot of people see us and like, oh, I think, oh, they got it made. And in the beginning, it was really hard and a lot of sacrifice, and, still is. And we still have bumps in the road. I still have to go out and train if someone leaves, and leaving the family. It's a lot harder now because, my kids, they want me around, but I know like long picture, like Humblebee, I have to be there to make sure that it runs smooth. And, and like I said, it takes a team. We have a great team. We have our phone team who have, like I said, made our lives so much easier. We have my very good friend who was my boss and manager at my first job. I knew she would work for Humblebee as well. She actually made our first logo too, and our website. And now she's our director of operations, and we couldn't do it without her. And like I said, my husband, who has made my wildest dreams come true, he helps me set up the rooms, and he's been a huge part of Humblebee. We wouldn't be where we are without him. He creates a lot of the procedures and does all like the templates, and, we sit and talk about things, and he's on his computer making it happen. So it takes a village, and I believe working for a place has its benefits. Like I said, I see some of our girls, I'm like, man, I wish I could, I wish I could be an employee, but and then also being a solo esthetician has its benefits. If you can create your own schedule, create your own hours, but you just have to remember that if you're not there, you're still have to pay for the room. You have to do everything. You're a one man show, and it is a lot of work, but it is doable. I always say, like, working for Humblebee, we do pay well, we do have insurance, we take kind of all of the hard stuff and give you just what you get to do, what you do in the treatment room and do what you love and still make a really good paycheck. Being the busiest without having to do anything, you'll make the same as if you're on your own, but without doing all the hard work, if that makes sense. But then you may have worked for a place that treated you wrong, that made you feel like a number, where your paychecks were very small. So working on your own, you're probably gonna make more than what you were working at a place like that. But you can sometimes find a place where they do give you the best of both worlds, and there are places out there who treat their estheticians well, and I still believe, like, you go so much farther as a team. Or you can go my route, which isn't easy, that's for sure. You can be an owner. You can open up a business and you can go the hiring route to where you do have employees. So there's many ways you can go. For me, I chose this long, like the slow and steady, be like water route because I knew now that I went on my own, I knew I couldn't work for anybody. For me, what made me make the decision, and I hope that this helps you decide where you would like to go, because I knew that having my own space, I knew I couldn't work for anyone else, especially because where I lived doesn't really pay that well. And, I was just used to like kind of the freedom of it. And then having my own studio, I knew it wasn't going to last. I knew I couldn't do it forever, especially being one person. I knew my body would get tired. I knew I would just get tired of the grind because I felt like I was grinding. I felt like I was even on my busiest times. I just felt like I was just in a hamster wheel of just working. And I know if I was on my own, I was capped at a certain point as well. So, but I was a hustler and I worked those 8 to 8 days. So I knew I could do it, but I just knew I was going to get tired at one point. And I had the kids and I knew I was going to miss out a lot on that. So the idea of feeling like it's going to be a long process, but in the long run, I feel like it's going to be better for my family if I hired and went that route. And it has, I mean, as much as I say how hard it is, and to this day, how hard it is, I am so grateful that I do have this team. We're able to, make money to give our estheticians a comfortable life, and having the insurance, really taking care of our staff. That just brings me more joy than anything. And it makes the project of Humblebee and expanding to different areas and growing it, and providing like a great lifestyle for our estheticians really is what keeps me going in this business adventure. So that's kind of where I landed. I went business route, and we've been open 12 years now. And have we had ups and downs? Absolutely. Has staff left? Yes. But it's just part of being an owner. And I hope that this helps you in any way to decide, like, when should I go off on my own? Like, if I should go, like, really not even that. Like, I hope this helps you decide where you're at in your esthetician journey. And helps you like open your eyes to what the possibilities are, because each one has possibilities for potential. It just is up to you if you want to hustle and you want to be by yourself, and or, you want to be employed, but be employed at a good, caring business, because I understand there are places that do turn and burn. But if you're at a place, it's amazing to work for a team. Or, you can go complete opposite of operating a business, which has its challenges. So I hope this helps you. I hope my journey inspires you to kind of open your eyes to where you're at today. Because I know you're maybe here one day, but then you may get more experience and have more ideas of growth, and will push you in different directions. So thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel, especially us being new. I would truly appreciate it. This is an adventure, like I said, that's brand new, and I know we're starting from ground zero. But just like Humblebee, I know we will get there. We'll get to all of your questions, and I hope I can guide you through your journey as an esthetician. Feel free to comment. The next part of the series is going to be questions. There'll be questions that I get all the time. Like I said, I in the treatment room, I get estheticians on the table still, and they ask me, "How did I do this? How did I grow this way? When was I ready to actually have employees?" And, so any questions that you have, please comment and I'll make sure to answer them in the question part of the series. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you. I'm rooting for all of you estheticians out there or anyone in the service industry because we all been there. We've all going through it, and I'm here to help in any way I can. So thanks for listening.